Hello everyone, welcome to the Fintech Friday series on the Sound of a Crowd podcast, where we unpack economic topics and affairs across the African continent. I'm your host, Adrian Daniel. This special series on Fintech Friday is the fifth of a 12-part series where we explore blockchain technology and cryptocurrency in a lot more detail. Special thanks to our sponsors, Binance Africa. Binance is the world's leading blockchain ecosystem and cryptocurrency infrastructure provider with a financial product suite that includes the largest digital asset exchange by volume. Trusted by millions worldwide, the Binance platform is dedicated to increasing the freedom of money for users and features an unmatched portfolio of crypto products and offerings, including trading and finance, education, data and research, social good, investment and incubation, decentralization and infrastructure solutions, and more. For more information, visit www.binance.com, or for more information, disclaimers, risk warnings, and links, please check the podcast description section below. In today's episode, we are joined by Yande Nomvete, Operations Manager over at Binance Africa. We'll be exploring the role of crypto in Ghana's economic recovery. We'll discuss things like empowering SMEs, including how cryptocurrency presents a unique opportunity for Ghanaian SMBs to access global markets without the burden of high-interest traditional banking, fostering financial inclusion and innovation. Hedging against inflation, that also includes with the depreciation of the Ghanaian Cedi, stablecoins offering a safer savings alternative, potentially stabilizing finances for individuals and businesses alike. And we'll also be looking at things like educational accessibility, including looking at platforms like Binance Academy, which are great resources for supporting the understanding and implementation of crypto technologies, paving the way for financial democratization and increased economic participation. References used for today's episode will all be found in the podcast player description section below. Let's get straight into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fintech Friday series with Binance Africa. I would like to welcome back Yande Nomvete back into the show. She's the operations manager for Binance Africa. Yande, how are you doing today?
Hey, Adrian, I'm doing well, thank you. Summer has finally decided to arrive in Cape Town, South Africa. I know we've spoken a few times over this year and I complained about the cold, but things are looking better. So I'm great. Thank you. I hope you're well too.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, just had a trip and spent some time in Zimbabwe. So I believe the seasons are more closer to South Africa. So it was quite interesting, just to hear about the seasons that they have. But yeah, it was lovely weather. Working some projects out there too, and yeah, should be on the move soon. But yeah, glad to see the weather shaping up as well. I think worldwide in general, we are getting towards the autumn winter point. So some parts of the world are going to get more colder for sure. Yeah, fantastic. All right. So yeah, I want to get into today's conversation. So in today's conversation, we want to explore the role of crypto in Ghana's economic recovery. Now, I want to kind of start the conversation on a couple of bits of news just to kind of get the conversation started. So recently, I just checked and I saw that the Ghanaian Cedi to the British pound is £1 to 21 Ghana cedis, which is at an absolutely all-time high. We may have discussed this, in previous interviews, Yande, or I may have discussed this in previous Fintech Friday solo episodes. But on top of that, it's quite interesting because Ghana's central bank, so they launched a gold coin to boost domestic savings and manage liquidity. And the coins are going to be available in October. And then they're also going to be priced based on the London Bullion Market Association auction. So I think these are all efforts to strengthen the cedi, because you can see that the cedi continues to depreciate against the pound. It continues to depreciate against the US dollar. So the Ghanaian currency is depreciating against, the dollars, the pounds, all these different currencies. So just want to kick off this conversation by just trying to hear your initial thoughts on where you see the Ghanaian cedi against popular foreign currencies of the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, we, to your point, definitely have seen, the cedi sort of, depreciate, against the value of other, Western countries. I think this is like a typical sort of narrative we're seeing globally in the sense. I mean, all of these themes seem to be ringing true, particularly on the continent, but even in the Western world in terms of, the depreciation of currency, higher cost of living, hyperinflation, etc., are all things that are, sort of key issues and key themes at a global level. However, I guess it is perpetuated even further in the context of, a lot of countries on the continent where, already our currencies were, quite, of low value compared to Western currencies. It's an interesting place to be. There's the conversation around, well, are we at the bottom? Is there an upside after this? How long will the bottom last, etc.? What's great, I'm always one who sort of looks at the glass half full, is that all of these things are cyclical. And, eventually the tide should eventually turn. And, the Ghanaian government at a monetary and fiscal level, are really doing the work. So you've mentioned, the gold reserve issue. I think they've also just come out with some really progressive, thoughts, and initiatives and progress around, crypto regulation, which, via stable coins, people could also then, hedge against inflation. That's one of the main sort of use cases when it comes to crypto. And so, I think it would be a lot more doom and gloom if the government at a monetary and fiscal level were just sitting on their hands. But there is a lot of progressive action happening, which is exciting. It's just about when those fruits will end up bearing, the rewards is the question, and when we sort of go towards that upturn of the cycle as opposed to being at the very bottom, which is what it feels like right now.
Yeah, it feels like the city's been declining for quite some time, and we're all just wondering when it's gonna be on an upward scale again. And it seemed that this is another throw of the dice in terms of to try and turn around the value of the city, with the gold reserve, and also looking at blockchain as well, where in the past, where, of course, they've had that injection from the IMF, what was it, $2-3 billion. And then, they've done other things to try and turn the city around. But it seems like there's still, there's still some struggle to stabilize the city. So perhaps, crypto could be, the one that comes to the rescue to try and, turn around the value of the city. But let's actually move into that, actually. So looking at what the government has been planning to do, I think we've discussed this in the past, Yande. I've discussed this in the past, the central bank digital currencies. I think with crypto in general, it's a great alternative to the Ghanaian Cedi and currencies in general. And I think we'll talk about that a bit more. But in terms of what's your thoughts in terms of looking at how central bank digital currency could maybe, be the answer to the Ghana government's current difficulty right now with where the Ghanaian Cedi is today?
Yeah, so a point of, I guess, like clarification is I don't think that like crypto will probably like necessarily help the devaluation of the Ghana Cedi, but I think it is a good haven for folks to have a bit of savings or potentially flee to, in inverted commas, in the wake of a depreciating currency, right? So, when we are in a hyperinflationary period, based on the trends that we see, internally at Binance, we're seeing quite a lot of adoption when it comes to stable coins. The PayPal USD stablecoin reached $1 billion market cap, with transaction counts nearing all-time highs. And a lot of that adoption is actually being driven by emerging markets, the African continent, your South Asian markets, etc. So I don't know that crypto is the solve to like the devaluation of a local currency. But I think it does offer a bit of security for individuals who are looking to maintain their purchasing power or, have a hedge against inflation and currency depreciation. In terms of what like a CBDC, does for local currency, in the medium and long term, we unfortunately don't have too many examples of this at a global level. And I guess it's always the conversation or the debate around, is it good? Is it bad? Is having a like, what's the point of it being a crypto token if it's centralized, etc. What I think it does is that it definitely like at least displays, the progressive and like innovative nature of, a country like Ghana, right? Who may, outside of its, rich exports be left out of significant conversations at a global level. And so a country like Ghana, really sort of pushing the boundaries, and innovating at that level. I think in terms of, sort of PR, if you will, for a country is great. I think in terms of just increasing accessibility and financial inclusion, it could be an interesting, sort of concept to explore as well. If you think about the sort of the unbanked population, is it easier for them to access currency on their mobile phone and transact that way versus, the traditional financial system as we currently know it? And then I think also just enhanced transparency, right? So unfortunately, corruption, at a continental level, like on the continent, is something that plagues a lot of our countries. Yeah, very, very sad. But, I guess the benefit of the blockchain is that it's super transparent. You have people that pay taxes, etc. And, at the end of the day, folks want to understand where their hard earned money is going, particularly once it's in the hands of the government. And I think that level of transparency also then, would foster trust, in the government, and, I guess the macro or longer term benefits of that, can be debated. But I think like those are the core themes around CBDCs. A local currency will always be a local currency, right? So it'll be affected by macro factors and the macro environment. But like in terms of innovation, I think it's great. In terms of transparency, I think it's great. And, people can always sort of then access and probably move a lot easier between local currency and stable coins or other crypto tokens if they'd like to. Again, something that, Binance, and that's the business that we're in, is something that we facilitate. So yeah, I don't know that it would solve devaluation, but I think it definitely says a lot for the level of innovation that's taking place in Ghana, particularly leading the charge on the continent for sure.
Absolutely. It was a fantastic response, answer. Thank you so much, Yande. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it may not necessarily help to improve the value of the Ghanaian cedi by looking at CBDCs, but I think what it will do is it will bring a level of transparency and security that hasn't been there before, so that maybe this may help to reduce corruption. This can help to, increase and improve transactions amongst, the country and maybe across the continent. This may all kind of contribute to improving the economy, and maybe in turn, it might even help the value of the city in the long run, in indirect ways. So I totally agree with what you're saying. I think this is all maybe a step in the right direction. But I also agree with regarding what you mentioned about stable coins. So encouraging citizens of Ghana to perhaps look to stable coins as maybe, a more kind of safer way, or maybe a more a more predictable way to kind of, hedge their money, or to be able to put maybe a safer way to maybe put their money, a safer container, if you will, to put their money into, where the value is not kind of very volatile. It's been kind of very stabilized. So people can also look at those kind of stable coins and maybe perhaps consider, putting their money into stable coins rather than the cedi, which keeps going up and down. And I know you mentioned, Binance plays their part in the stable coin infrastructure. Could you tell us? I don't know if you could tell us a bit more about BNB Chain. I know that's one of Binance's
BNB
products.
Chain was, essentially created to facilitate and enhance development for, particularly crypto builders within the ecosystem. Again, I think that's actually a great question, and it's something that's kind of forgotten in ways, around the fact that Binance is not just a place to buy, sell, and trade crypto. It's more than just an exchange. We consider ourselves an infrastructure provider, at I think I'd also go as far to say like we are over and above being an infrastructure provider. Binance is a very key ecosystem enabler. You'd be hard pressed to find any other major exchange that doesn't accept crypto transactions happening on the BNB chain by virtue of the magnitude of Binance, right? So it's a network, it's an ecosystem enabler. Your crypto engineers and developers can build on BNB Chain for a variety of different decentralized apps or apps that would sort of be applicable, to their use case. Again, like just super, cutting edge and innovative, and really like being a source of, enablement for innovation, is essentially why BNB Chain was created. And it's something that like we're still very, proud of. We're always also looking to invest in, new ecosystem players, via our venture capital arm as well, which happens on the with the BNB Chain team. I'd say like BNB Chain is our hub for development and innovation. I'd say like Binance is the boring side. That's where I'm. And BNB Chain really is, innovation, ecosystem enabler. People can build on it and apply their use cases, to their communities from there. And I guess that's like the exciting thing about crypto is I think we're still yet to figure out and find out all of the use cases. And I think like bringing it back to, sort of the Ghanaian context is, we spoke about the devaluation of the cedi, but I think it's also important to, emphasize that like the outlook for the country is like a lot more like optimistic. IMF like recently revised Ghana's growth forecast upward from 2.8% to 3.1%. And, the foreign exchange reserves has also increased, and, business sentiment has improved. So there's quite a lot of, optimism as well. I think it's not all doom and gloom. Again, I think like perfect storm, if you will, for, innovators, entrepreneurs to really start building and like thinking about, what the future looks like, because, the economy does look primed for significant success, probably will happen a bit longer term, but the outlook from the global community is looking really great. And I think it's high time potentially that, the youth start thinking about, okay, how do I integrate crypto into, if I want to build a fintech startup, or how do I integrate AI, or, let me think about biotech. Like there's so much innovation happening. And it would be great. I think like this platform was also amazing, right? Like having something like a Fintech Friday is like really democratizing, people's access to those concepts and like getting them thinking about how they can apply that to their lives and like, I guess not get left behind, in the advancement and development, of Ghana as a whole.
Absolutely. Wow. What a contribution there, Yande. I really do agree with everything you said. And I think it's a good segue to talking about how we can empower SMEs in Ghana with cryptocurrency, because we did talk about how consumers can be empowered by, helping to avoid high inflation rates by looking at cryptocurrency, especially stablecoins, as a way to, hedge their funds, their money. But I think it's also important to consider how, we can support the economy in Ghana with the businesses who contribute a lot to the economy, with how they could potentially use cryptocurrency to help their businesses. Because I guess as much as we've talked about the devaluation of the cedi in Ghana, of course, there's other challenges in Ghana, such as a lot of very small businesses being unbanked, or small to medium-sized businesses maybe being able to have access to a bank, but the interest rates are far too high. So cryptocurrency is that nice little middle ground where it's something they have access to, and also maybe they may not necessarily be high interest if it does involve interest in terms of lending money, lending funds, borrowing funds from a bank. So what would be your point of view in terms of cryptocurrency in Ghana, and also how Binance, could play a part in this, in terms, or how Binance does play a part in this in terms of helping SMBs utilize cryptocurrency to maybe help them gain access to funds in addition to creating innovations, which is something I think we've already explored?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think, SMEs are really sort of the best, or one of the best target audiences when it comes to crypto, particularly in a market like, Ghana, right? Like you think about the high level of tourism that happens during December. I'm still yet to make my way out to Ghana during December. I have the big flow. From what I see, people send onto, what's a beautiful country en masse, right? And it's not like that level of traffic isn't decreasing. And the question for me is always like, okay, cool. It'd be great if, SMEs could accept, or like how many of these SMEs can accept, crypto, because that would really sort of make transactions so much easier for tourists, right? They don't have to convert into local currency. And, I guess sort of, take the hit from whatever rate changes happen at that point, carrying cash. I know Ghana's a pretty safe country, but carrying cash also, carries risks, etc. And so paying with crypto is something that, is a way that, SMEs really sort of open themselves up to a global audience without necessarily having to go jump through hoops, to open a dollar bank account or, have presence in another country, right? Like I'll just use like the UK, for example. Luckily at Binance, we do enable the onboarding of businesses of any size, really. And, once they've been onboarded, they can, accept payments via Binance Pay, which is, one of our key products. What's interesting about Binance Pay is that, it's seen really high adoption. So we saw last year our transactions saw by 71%, surpassing $77 billion. That's at a group level, and Binance Pay users grew by 70%. So we're seeing like a lot of users, going above and beyond just holding their crypto for investment or to hedge against inflation, but like the payment use case is there. Anecdotally, I spend a lot of time in South Africa, and we're seeing a lot more merchants here also accept crypto. So like one of our biggest, supermarket retailers accept crypto. And, some of the feedback that I've gotten from friends internationally who are obviously crypto users is that's super convenient, right? Like I can buy groceries in South Africa without having to exchange my pounds or dollars or euros to rand, which sort of is super convenient. So I think like that's the one use case and like the obvious one. I think the second one that you touched on, again, because, for small to medium enterprises rather, access to funding or finance can really be inaccessible, like completely inaccessible. Banks always feel more comfortable, I guess, lending money to more established enterprises, your global enterprises that have global presence. And that leaves small to medium enterprises completely out of the conversation. And also then like hinders their growth. Like speak to any person who's been successful in business and they'll always be like, yeah, debt is your best friend, leverage.
It's true.
Blah, blah, blah. But
it's
like,
true.
The reality is like, who has access to that leverage? Like who can access that level of debt that can 10x or like 100x their business? And so like with crypto, although I don't think we've reached that level yet where like the loan use case or like the loan concept or like debt or leverage concept is like fully fleshed out and that like the user experience is also friendly. There are mechanisms like, initial coin offerings or token based fundraising that, provide an alternative way to raise funds without relying on traditional banking institutions, which can enable small to medium enterprises. Again, I think on this, like, I definitely encourage people to do their own research. I think like Luna, which crashed in 2022, was kind of based on a similar model, and that didn't go very well for them.
I think I remember that project. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it was sort of decentralized finance, leverage, etc. So like, I would encourage folks that are looking to get involved with like fundraising or loans via tokens to do their own research. it is a whole other world, like it's an amazing world. It's super accessible. It's like one of the things about crypto that I'm like, that really sort of encapsulates and highlights when we speak about access to finance. Decentralized finance is that, like, if you had these tokens, you could loan them to X person, and via the blockchain, the amount you've loaned is safe. There are mechanisms in way, like, to ensure that you are able to get your funds back. And that, like, completely democratizes and, like, really decentralizes finance, and, like, gives anyone access to mechanisms and tools like loans, like leverage, etc. And so again, like, that's another way in which, like, small to medium enterprises could really tap into blockchain and crypto to drive growth. It is something that requires a bit more research. I think we have a lot of material about this on Binance Academy. But yeah, I think, like, that, those are, like, two of the ways in which, Binance is sort of helping to enable business innovation and growth. There's a lot, like, there are so many more ways. I think it would be really cool if you do have any small to medium sized enterprise, like, business owners listening to this, like, they could sign up to Binance as a Binance Pay merchant. I mean, if it makes sense for them, of course. I would be really stoked, like, when I eventually make it out to Ghana, to see people accepting, or, like, to see businesses accepting Binance Pay, because yeah, the Ghanaian tourism, industry is just soaring right now. And I think it's a really easy and accessible way for businesses to take advantage of, that tourism aspect, through, crypto. Really, they could accept any currency in the world. And I think that's a powerful statement for any business to be able to make, particularly in a high tourism environment.
Wow. That is it's a loaded answer. It's a loaded contribution, Yande. But of course, everyone has the opportunity to listen back to this, pause and play, and just take everything that they can. But of course, we will list all of the key references and the tools in the podcast description below, especially the Binance one. So thank you, Yande, for highlighting those tools and resources, because that's really important, especially for the small to medium sized businesses and the entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast. And I think it's really incredible, because we are in such a day and age where there's the internet is such a beautiful place where democracy, exists, and, just using vehicles such as fundraising, I think is fantastic. And also, we also easily forget that Africa, is a whole continent. So as much as, maybe not being able to get a bank loan may be tough, I think the power of cryptocurrency for cross-border transactions, I think that alone is very, very powerful. And once you can get access to cryptocurrency, I think doing trade with different countries across Africa is going to be, or is really fantastic. But thank you so much, Randy, for that contribution. I just want to close out with final thoughts. If you have any final thoughts in regards to cryptocurrency and looking at cryptocurrency in terms of, Ghana's economic recovery, would like to hear any final thoughts if you do have any. Otherwise, we're going to close out today's episode.
Yeah. I guess my final thoughts, again, like always, like, just want to be super realistic as possible, right? So, crypto definitely isn't a silver bullet. I hope I didn't come across that way, during conversation. I think there's still a lot more, like, hurdles to overcome. There's so much more education, that needs to take place about it as a tool, as a currency, as a way to transact. And I think, like, platforms like these are great in terms of facilitating that. So crypto isn't a silver bullet, but I think there's room to embrace it. I think there's room to use it to your advantage, whether you are an individual that's really stressed out about, if you have savings and you are uncertain about the future of the cedi, it could potentially hedge your savings against inflation and maybe consider stable coins as a way to save. I think if you're a business, again, like, if you import raw materials, like, and you're struggling to figure out, how do I pay this person in India for my, textiles? Crypto is an avenue to think about. And obviously, you always your own research and educate yourself via Binance Academy. But yeah, I guess that's the message. Crypto is not a silver bullet, but there's a lot of opportunity that exists in it. And yeah, just encourage folks to explore. If they ever need to make a transaction with anyone across borders, ask yourself, can crypto solve this problem for me? Most likely, yes. And always hedging against inflation is, one of the key use cases as well. And that's all from me.
Many thanks to our guest, Yande Nomvete, Operations Manager of Binance Africa, for her contribution to this episode. You can connect with her on LinkedIn, and you can find more about Binance by checking the links in the description below. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Fintech Fridays with Binance Africa. See you in the next episode.